All right, everybody. Well, we'll see if this is actually recording and working. Once again, here I am at WCTC, you can see. It's about 6 o'clock. I thought maybe if you saw the announcement tonight that I would give it a try to see if you were interested in joining the so-called classroom tonight, just to see if there was some questions, and I wanted to make myself available. So even if you don't happen to join, which you'll see this message if you do happen to join later, I will be posting this. So if you have any questions, even whether you can get in this or not, or you can see the video later, I'll try to start being available during this whole period. Not that I haven't been available. I hope that's, you don't think that's the case, but I'm going to try to leave Zoom up and running, especially during this time period when we would typically have class. So that way you can pop in at any time. Hopefully I have the chime turned on, so hopefully I'll hear that. But you can always send me an email also. I posted in the announcement, you can always send me an email and you can schedule a time to talk to me, so there's no problem there. But what I'm gonna do tonight is I'm going to go through the solution from the class assignment that's due next week on the 20th. So basically what this is going to be the operations around displaying and adding both a blog and a post. So I know this is the assignment, but I know not everybody's done it yet. In fact, most of you have not, and I know there's been some questions on that. So I thought, hey, why don't we start making this our process? And please give me feedback on this, but I thought we could start going through, we'll look at the assignments and we'll see what is there that's due, and then we'll go through it step by step by step, as opposed to normally we'd do this week by week anyways, but because we've got this sort of goofy schedule, I figured we've got 2 weeks now, so that gives you time to look at it, time to work on it, and then we'll use our typical week and we'll go through it and allow you to see how we would work on that in class. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that's maybe a little convoluted, but long story short, you get 1 week to work on it and then another week where we go through it much more carefully, okay? So nobody has joined, so that's fine. But I'm sitting here again. This time I've got my coffee, so that's important. My Peru mug, see, that's very important. So, so I'm gonna go through it and you can follow along. If you have any questions, like I said, please reach out. Okay. So this probably looks more than familiar to you right now. And I know some of you had this problem. So you pull down the code and you find out that you've got this thing. So what we'll do is we'll build this and we'll say rebuild. And we've got a problem right now where the packages themselves aren't available. It says nlog, and even if you look down here in the errors, the type or namespace nlog cannot be found. So hopefully you can see that. I'm gonna try to take advantage of our good old magnifying glass here, but my computer is a little bit slower than the one that I have on the lab. So, but you can see here, typer, namespace, nlog could not be found, okay? So what we'll do is we will take a look and see how can we fix that. Well, the first thing you can do is you can come into the solution and you can say manage Nuget packages for solution. And you can see right now, if we go to the installed tab, the installed tab will show us the things that are currently installed. Here's some nlog stuff, here's the identity framework. The first thing I would probably do is, sometimes you'll get lucky and it'll say up here that the things have not been installed. Like it'll say some of the packages that are installed as part of the solution are not available and you need to restore them. So that's one thing you can try. And what's nice about that is that generally will fix the problem. But if we go out to the command window here, open folder and file explorer, we can go take a look at this, see where it opens. We can see that there is this packages. And remember, there's this packages.config too, which we can see in our solution package.config right here. These should be the same thing. So here's the identity framework and the nlog, okay? And those should be here in this packages folder. So here's the same thing. So we can see that that packages matches what was downloaded into our directory. So generally, if they're here, the first thing you can really try is you can just say, all right, you know what, let's just delete the packages folder. Maybe something got messed up there. That's probably a good place to start. We'll try that. All right, so packages should go away here. And then what we'll see is that when we look, packages is gone. So let me refresh. There, it's gone. So now if we try to build this again, build, rebuild, we should see that it tries to restore the Nuget packages. And let's see if that happens. Go back to our program here. Okay, so we're still getting this problem. So something's a little bit goofed up with nlog in general. So I'm sorry, not nlog, Nuget in general, where it's telling us that it's not able to find anything. So at this point, maybe what I would do is I would just close the whole thing down and then restart, especially now that we have already gone to the trouble of deleting the things that are part of this. So notice there is no packages here anymore. All right, so packages, let's see, I tried to pull them down again, and in fact it did, but that didn't fix the problem. So let's see, so we'll start this back up. So today's gonna be a little bit of a troubleshooting. We're gonna go through all the problems, all the questions that people have had. Hopefully that'll address those things for you. And then also, we'll go through the code line by line. Some of you have had questions about how to associate a post and a blog together, so we'll look at that. We'll look at how to insert those. We'll look at how to read those, okay? So once this gets started again, let's take a look. More coffee. Sorry, it's not Peruvian coffee. Sorry, even though I have a Peruvian mug, I guess that makes it kind of Peruvian, right? All right. My Peruvian wife, who is sitting in the room right behind me that you can't see, she's hiding back here. She's behind that tree over there. See that tree? She's hiding over there. So, but she's, I'm sure, very, very happy with me. Am I looking the right way? Yes, I'm looking at the tree. That's good. That's important. Like I said, my computer here is very slow. So while we wait for the computer to start, you have to put up with my bad jokes. All right. So let's see. Is there anything we can look at here in the meantime? Oh, I did mention this last week as well. This app config, this is the one, if I open this up here in my, just a simple text editor real quick, I'll just show you. If you remember from last time, this is the context information for that connection string that I want to be able to connect to. So I tend to keep that app config just sort of laying around, and that way I don't have to keep doing it again and again and again. So what I would recommend is pull that out of one of your old solutions. And we'll talk about how to put that into your solution here real quick, but pull that out of one of your old solutions. In fact, I pulled that out of my old lesson 9 here. That's the same file right there. So I just happen to be in my lesson 10 directory, and I just pulled that thing back in here, okay? So I'd highly recommend you keep that laying around, okay? So anyways, let's try to build this again. Build, rebuild. To be honest, it's probably not gonna fix it, but let's see what happens. It might. Okay, so you can see here, those of you that are not on the call didn't have to sit through that long build process while my computer decided to start up, so that's wonderful. But you can see it's still failing here. So what we can do is we can go back into the Nuget package manager, like where we were where we were before. Oh, and I should do something else too, real quick. Like I mentioned that that file that I have. Because you can see one of the errors that it's complaining about. It's saying the application configuration file app config is invalid. So you know what I'm going to do right away is I'm just going to take that app config file right here that I saved off from another solution, and I'm going to just copy that in just to make that easier. They don't have to keep seeing that error anymore. So I'm going to manage the Nuget packages for solution. And what I will do is I'll come into the updates tab. So instead of looking at the installed like we did before, I'm going to come into updates. I'm just going to say select everything. In this case, I don't have that much. So I'm just going to say, yeah, go ahead. Let's do an update. And then once this update runs, what it's going to do is it's going to go out, and you can see it's going to say, I'm going to perform a few updates here. And in the meantime, it will allow me to see what's going on. This license acceptance doesn't come off all the time. It doesn't come up all the time, but it will come up occasionally for specific packages. And usually you just want to say I accept, but it's really because it's been licensed to a third party in some way. So what we can see though is if we look at this console output down here, we can see that the messages coming up are telling us now that it's taking care of specific things. In fact, you can even say it's mentioning this packages.config. And once it completes, we'll give this a try again. So what happened here is it popped up and said, as part of the project that you already have, your nlog config, it already exists and asks if you want to overwrite it. Well, in this case, I don't want to do that, but that's because nlog is being installed, it's being updated, and we don't want to overwrite the one that we already have because the configuration is already the way we want it. So I could say yes, and I could just say whatever the default, that's fine. But if you really don't want to delete everything, I'm just going to say no, I don't want you to overwrite the one that I already have configured. Now, if I was doing a major upgrade, I would want to be sure to choose the new nlog.config. I would say, yes, please update that, because we're never sure if the configuration has changed. But for a minor update like it is, from a minor version to a minor version change, we shouldn't expect that those config files have changed. Okay, so we can see that took care of it. So all we did was we did an update, and that changed everything here. So there's, like I said, there's a handful of things you can do. Sometimes it's a matter of going through and cleaning out the packages, deleting the old packages, updating the packages config. Sometimes you can drop a version, bring a version back. Nuget honestly gets a little bit goofed up sometimes. And there's other dependencies than the things we just see in the packages config. There's things in the CS proj. There's sometimes things in the solution file. So we have to be a little bit aware of the fact that there's even references in here. So sometimes the references can get goofed up. So you can go through the hassle. Honestly, it's fine. In fact, I would recommend it just to understand the pain points. Go through and try to clean this all up manually, clean up the references, clean up the packages config, clean up the solution file, clean up the CS proj file. It is a headache, but I wanted to show you a little bit easier way so you don't have to go through all of that trouble. And I'm sure some of you might have some ideas about how you could also clean that up a little bit easier as well. So feel free to share those with your classmates if you found other ways. But for me, that's really the easiest way. Go through and just do it through the Nuget package manager. Okay, so at this point now, if we take a look at the application and we just say debug, let's just start without debugging, everything should be fine. We should see our console output window come up and everything should be good. And so we get our console output window. So there we go. Everything's good. So I'm just going to close this down because we're not going to play with this. This is what we did last time. Hopefully that looks a little bit familiar and we don't have to go through that again. Okay, settings. I'm going to go through the blog and post here. So the first thing we'll want to do really is, we did this last time where we had a blogging context, and we did a blog ad. So, and that was hopefully pretty straightforward. We did this idea of a just find the specific blog. So, or really this is just ordering the blog. So it's really just dumping the blogs out. So this whole section here is really just dumping the blogs out. In fact, I don't really care about that right now, so I'm going to take that out. We can do that later if we have to. But it's really just this here, this add blog. And if we look at the context, I happen to know that this add blog method was here, and this was added by someone else. So you can see it's really not necessary. It's really just these two commands right here. And my problem with having this is that it does get sort of, it adds a level of abstraction or redirection that's probably not really necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment that out. And I'm just going to grab this line right here, because this is all we care about, this blogs.add. So in the program itself, notice if we just do blogs.add, it's the same thing, okay? And the only thing that we have to remember to do is this db, which is the name of our blogging context here, is our db.save changes, okay? So that's it. So this section right here is really all we, in fact, if we just get rid of this, this is all we care about, okay? So we're gonna say, get a new blog, or create a new blog. And by that, I mean create a new class named blog, and then access our blogging context which has the actual db set and then add, okay? This acts just like a list, and we're gonna do a save, okay? So that's really all we care about. Now, the thing is that if we want to do something like adding, let's put a little comment in here. We want to add a post, add a post. What we'd like to do is, because if we look at that post again, so if we look at the post model here, we've got a couple of things that we have to be concerned with. We've got just the post ID, but we've got a title and content, but it's really this blog ID that we need. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but the problem is that if we're going to add a new post, we're going to want to do something like this. So we have to say, enter a name for a blog. So enter a name for your blog, all right? And in that case, what we'll do is we'll say, actually, you know what we should do? We should say enter, let's just say, maybe not enter a blog, let's say select a blog. How about that? Select a blog. That's probably more what we need to do, right? select a blog. All right. So in this case, what we need to do is dump out the blogs that happen to be part of it. So there's that code that I probably shouldn't have deleted, right? Let's see. I am going to copy. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to copy it from another window that I happen to have open. So let's do select a blog. Okay. So this is where I would ask you to tell me, what is this query? Well, query is the thing that we're supposed to be iterating over, which should contain the blogs. It really should be the enumerable of our blog. So if we go back and look at that context, it's this right here, this DB set of blogs, right? That's really what we want to loop over, is loop over all of our blogs. So then we should be able to just say, get our blogs, right? So let's dump out our blogs, but let's first write the query and say, var query equals db.blogs, okay? And we can see that because if we look here, that's where that comes from, this db.blogs. That's this right here. And it's our blogging context dot blogs, okay? So that's where we get our db context, or blogging context, which is this db. We just happen to name it db.blogs, okay? Now remember, the thing that is returned is this db set of blog. Right, so it's not exactly the thing that maybe you would expect. And if we try to run this here, in fact, I'm going to call this blogs just to avoid any confusion, lowercase blogs, and we'll say loop over blogs. Okay, and let's see what happens. I am going to, for now, comment all this stuff out. And I want to say, right now it's not adding a post, of course. Oops, I still need this, don't I? Let's copy this down. Okay. Copy this here. Okay. So what we would expect this to do, and this was a question that somebody else had last week for me. What we'd expect this to do is be able to loop over the blogs, like I said. So it's going to go out and get the blogs, loop over them, and dump out the name of each blog, right? In fact, we could even maybe dump out some other properties here, but right now we've got a name and a blog ID. So for now, let's just go with it, okay? So I'm going to say debug and start without debugging. Let's see what happens first of all. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So it's because I didn't have a connection before. That's why it took a little while. So these are some of the testing things that I had from before. So you can see what it did is it did program ended, and there we go. So it dumped out the things that we expect. Now, the reason I brought this up is because some people were having problems where they could not, I guess to summarize, all we're looking to do here is just dump out the post, dump out the blog, okay? So this is very similar to what we did last time. The reason I brought this up is because some students were having problems where they could not dump this out. So like if we tried to do this right now, so instead of dumping out this, and we just said, you know what, console write line, blogs dot, what do we want to say? Blogs dot, title or something, right? I mean, whatever that property happened to be. Sorry, I don't remember what it was. Blogs, name, sorry. Blogs.name, right? We'd expect to be able to maybe do something like that. I mean, this is a list, so we might have to select the first item in the list somehow, right? So whether we can do this and get the name, right? But see, it's actually going to be giving us all sorts of problems. And I don't know exactly what what some of you were trying to do, but the point is that this here blog is a DB set at this point. Now, I may have mentioned this in the past, but the thing is that a DB set is really still an active connection out to the database. Okay, that's really this thing here, this blogging context. So these guys are, consider these an active connection. So it's different than if we were to do this, because I could do this. What if all I did was just say dot to list? Oops, type there. And if I run this program, come on. There we go. If we build and run this here. So once this runs, we shouldn't see any difference. There we go. Okay. So this is exactly the same output that we had last time. So really, if we look at this code here from what I had last time, the only difference is the addition of this to list. But if we look at the return type right now, the return type you can see is actually of type list. So that's maybe no surprise, but there's a significant difference between the code with the to list and the code without the to list, even though functionally it seems the same. And what it is the way that the data is being returned and how we have access to it. So when it's still a DB set, we can come back in and we can make changes to it. So we could say blogs at this point, blogs dot, let's say where, right? And we can come in and say blogs dot name equals something. And we could say maybe user choice or something. We don't have a variable name that yet, but the point is that right now, if we were to ask the user to insert some sort of data, in fact, let's clean this up. We'll do this and we'll show you. Let's have the user enter a blog. We'll say, let's do this, console write line, select a, oh, I have it there. My computer is very slow. There we go. So we'll say select a blog, and what we'll do is we'll have the user have them dump out all the blogs here. And we'll say select a blog, and we'll ask the user to enter a name. So let me just clean this all up a little bit. Okay, down here, and we'll do console.read line. And we'll take the value here. We'll start into this user choice. So we'll say var user choice. Okay. So what we want to do at this point is ask the user. So what the hope would be is that this would just be a single blog, right? But now if we look and see what the return type is right now of this, we can see that it is an iQueryable. Now, I think I've mentioned in the past before where this is something that returns a full list, because just like in a regular where clause, if we were to type in select star from something, right, select star from table, that potentially, even if we had a where clause where, col1 equals, something, some value, my val, something, right, this could return more than one row, unless we were to say something like select top one, or depending on what language you're working in, right? So that's no different in LINQ, where this where clause, this name could be more than one value. It could exist in the table more than one time. So this where is going to return a collection, an iQueryable, okay? So we can change that by saying dot first or default. And now if we look at the return type is really just a blog, a single instance of blog, because we're saying only return the first thing that you find, or default, meaning the default for that specific row, which is probably an empty blog, okay? Now, let's take a look here. If we say blogs, in fact, let's do this first. I'll put that back there. Okay, and I'm gonna clean this up. I think I showed before in class, this might be quite a while ago, but we can actually replace this. So we can just pop this first or default over to this where here. And now we have a blog that contains the thing that we need. So if I now say, I want to create a brand new post, so now the user selected a blog and we have that value stored. Now we want to ask the user and say, enter a post. Okay, and what we'll have to do is we'll have to ask the user for those specific values that we need. So what do we need? Well, we need a handful of things. So let's say var post equals new post. And what have we got? We've got post dot, let's see, post dot title is going to equal something, and post dot content is going to equal something. And most importantly, our post dot blog ID, not the blog. The blog is actually, notice the type here. The type is actually blog. Okay, so here it's actually the blog ID. It's an integer, so the blog ID is really, it's going to be whatever they happen to select up here. It's this blog, but it's not the blog, it's the blog ID. Okay, because they went out, we're assuming they found a blog at this point, or they selected a blog. We should put error checking in here. You should put error checking in here. Make sure people are not entering garbage data, because if they select a blog that doesn't exist, there's going to be a problem, right? So this here, we probably need to do something with this to dump out the blog, you know, console write line, say, here are all the blogs, something like that. I don't know. Dump them out and then ask the user to select a blog. Say, we should probably be a little more specific, enter a blog name, right? Now, what you could do is ask the user to enter the blog ID, maybe dump out the blog and the blog IDs. So we could certainly do that if we wanted. Maybe put item dot, do the blog ID here and format it out nicely, not like I'm doing it. And then you could ask the user to enter the blog ID. That might be a little easier than entering the name, right? So at this point though, we've dumped out all the blogs for the user to see. We're asking the user to enter the name of the blog. And then we're going to say, enter a post. Now, here's where we'd have to ask the user for some information because these are the things that we need. We need the title, the content, and we're going to use the blog ID from the previous entry. So enter a post means, let's see, how about we'll do console write line, enter a title. Our title equals dot read line. And then I think you see where this is going. Let's see if this works though. And I'm just going to copy these 2 lines here. And we'll put this over here. Enter title. And let's do this. I'm going to kind of spread this around a little bit. Maybe not. Let's try this. Enter a title. So this will be the title here. And then let's say enter some content. We'll call this content. Put this here. Okay. Oops, I lost my post. Var post equals new post. Okay. Like I said, the computer's a little slow. It keeps popping up on me like this. There we go. Okay, so at this point now, the only thing it's going to complain about here is that blog could potentially be null. Notice it says possible null reference exception. And that's because depending on how we enter this, of course, this is where I mentioned you make sure you have your user do some good validation here, make sure program's validating that the user isn't entering garbage here and then ending up with no selection when this query runs, because it may return nothing. So this would fail, of course. So let's see. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a different sort of instantiation, this object initializer, which is really a little bit more clean. Notice it'll put everything in one line, so that's a little bit more readable, I think. Sometimes I will do it like this. Okay, a little bit more readable. Now, granted, we're not doing anything with post here. So what do we need to do with the post? So let's see. We should probably save the post, right? Save the post. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we have to somehow get that database, db.posts.add, and we're going to add that post. So we've seen this before when we added a blog earlier. Here's where we're adding the post. And then what's the last thing we have to do? Save changes. Okay. And then just to confirm, we should probably dump out the posts. Why don't we do that? So I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to take this little, is this the cheater line? Where's our cheater line here? Yeah, we can take that one, I guess. So once it's saved, we should be able to say var item in db.posts. See if that works. Write out item dot, what was our title? Let me try title. Okay. And we'll say, here are the posts. Okay. So we've got quite a bit going on here. I know it's a little bit ugly. Maybe I should comment this up a little bit. But we'll say show all blogs. And then this one will say ask user to select blog. Okay. And then this one will say ask user to enter post details. And then right here, I think I'll consider this part of the saving the post because we're actually instantiating the object. Save the post. Okay. And then this one will, okay, we'll get rid of that one there. And then we'll just say right here, display the posts. Come on, there we go. Okay, so let's run this and see if this works. Provided I typed on the fly and everything worked like it expected, we should be all set. I'm gonna run this, debug, start without debugging. Part of this is slow too because I'm connecting out to the WCTC website or WCTC database server, and that's a little bit slow just from my internet here. So anyway, so we've got here all the blogs, and I'm going to enter a blog name. So in this case, I'm going to have to type this exactly because otherwise it's not going to work for me. And again, this is maybe where you want to use the ID. So you might want to dump out ID dash or something like that and let the user enter an ID and then maybe loop if they don't choose one, right? So enter a blog name. I'm going to say test blog. It's going to say, please enter a post, enter a title. All right. I'm going to say test blog title. Very creative. Enter some content. This is some content for test blog. Okay. All right. And then here are the posts. You see, so it must have done a save here, which I maybe could have dumped out a little message, saved. And then test post title, here we go. Well, it looks like we've got a couple out there because all I did was I just looped over them. So, but here's my test blog title. There we go. And the program ended. So it looks like it worked okay. So we can always come out to and verify if we connect out to our database and take a look and see how that worked. But a couple of students had that question about how this thing was being saved. And I think the biggest problem that everybody had was really this right here. So make sure that when you're saving, you are actually going out and you're getting the blog. However you do that, like this here, make sure you get the blog. And then that specific blog ID that gets returned is saved as part of the post, because otherwise that relationship won't work, right? Because remember, the post has to have a blog ID. This is not nullable here. This is a one-to-many relationship. This blog ID has to exist. So when you save that thing out in the program, this has to exist. Otherwise, it's going to throw an error on you.
All right, awesome.
Okay.
I'm not 100%, but in .NET, when you do a console.readline, if the user just returns nothing, is that, if they just hit enter, is that just going to give you an empty string?
Yeah, it will. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so there's actually a string that is null or empty or is null as white space. You can use that to check it. So those are pretty handy.
So then with the title, could you do like or operation and say either give the title, or if the title's empty or white space, if it's not an actual title, just have this default in its place?
So what kind of default would you want?
Like just new title or something, just
sure.
Just a generic something so that it's
sure.
not empty and you at least have a title when people are going through looking for the blogs.
Sure, you can do that. You know, the other way to do it too is you wouldn't even have to do the check. All you'd really, well, yeah, you'd probably want to check and see if it's empty. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, you could do that. That would work. Yeah, good question. Okay. So if there's no other questions, I'll go on here though. But yeah, thanks. If you don't mind, I'll include questions and things like that in the video in case anybody else has any other questions.
No problem.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So don't let that dissuade you from asking questions. All right. So that really this really did cover a lot of the content as far as displaying a blog. Adding a blog, we did that last time. So creating a post, so we did see how to do that. So display blog, this is creating a post. We want to be able to display the posts. The only thing we haven't really looked at was how to delete or edit posts, and that's a little bit more challenging, right? So let's take a look at that for a little bit and see how we can do that. So it's not very hard, but it is maybe something that isn't super intuitive, okay? So what we'll do is after we display the posts, maybe we'll say edit post, and we'll ask the user to select a post. In fact, let's do that. I'm sorry for this stream of consciousness programming, sort of this linear, but we're gonna have to, maybe I'll comment things out or something, but ask the user to select a post, okay? So this is where we could come through, just like we did before, ask the user to select a blog, and we could ask them. But realistically, we already have a post here. Well, shoot, we should probably ask them. Yeah, we're gonna have to ask them. We'll do it that way, I guess. So let's see, enter a blog. We're gonna do this here. Do a little copy paste here. Enter a post name. So luckily the posts were just displayed out here. So we'll call this post choice. Come on. Believe it or not, I did type. My computer is just that slow sometimes. Come on, there it goes. Post choice. Okay, so we're gonna ask the user to select a post, and then what we're going to want to do is be able to edit that post. So once they select the name, so the big difference here is that before what we did is we created a brand new instance of post. Notice this here, new post. Notice there's a big difference between creating a new instance of post and actually getting, like in this case, the blog that we did last time. So what we want to do here is very similar to when we actually went out and sort of pulled back the blogs, right? We're going to go back and get the post. Now, this is maybe a little bit strange, but it's important to understand that if the post is new, it's going to behave quite a bit different than if the post already existed. Now, from a database perspective, that probably makes a lot of sense. If it's new, we want to save it, but if it's something that's already out there, we want to update it. But in code, it's not always super intuitive on how that's actually functioning. So what we'll do is we'll call this one maybe new. You know what, here, let's do this. I'm gonna call this one new post. Oops, post. I'll change that real quick just to make it a little more clear. And we'll call this one post. So just like before, db.posts dot, and what we'll do is a where, and we want to find the post that has that specific title. And we'll do post choice here. Okay, so just like before, we can make this a first or default. That way we know, come on, first or default. It's hard to type when your computer is very slow. Get no feedback immediately. All right, so in this case, let's take a look at our return type, and our return type should be, there we go, come on, a single post, okay? So again, notice the big difference. Here we have a post that was found as part of the DB context. This one here is brand new. Now, the reason that's so important is because when we come down and we do a final save, like if, let's say we had this save right here as part of the edit. So in this case, we're going to, let me put a little comment in here, edit the existing post, and then we'll save the post, right? But when we edit this thing, if it was a brand new post, regardless of what we did, so if we had this same code, if I copied that and put it down here, and then maybe I just asked the user to enter something new. So let's have them enter some new content maybe. Let's do that. So let's say enter new post content. Come on, content, wow. Okay, so I unlock that. So in this case, we'll say new content. All right. Now, the thing is that if we just had this code and we just said content equals new content right down here, content equals new content. Sorry, guys, my computer, like I said, does not cooperate very much. All right, so if we said new, if we said post, oh boy. New post. And we just said content, because that's what we want, content equals new content. The problem that we have with this is that there is no context associates, even if we tried to save it at this point, or even if we tried to do like an add post or something like that, like we did up here, or db.post.add, the database would see it as a brand new item and it would try to do an insert. So despite the fact that we said, oh, let's go in and reassign the title and the content, even if we tried to assign the blog ID, the post ID, we'd have a problem, because the system would say, you didn't attach this to an existing context, and therefore we think it's new. And what's happening is, in the background, Entity Framework is actually tracking the context and the state of the context, the model state. So it knows whether or not it's been attached before, it knows if it's been modified, it knows if it's new, all sorts of things, okay? So it's really important, and this got some of you, so it's really important though that if you're going to be editing something or deleting something, if you're going to be managing in any way something that already existed, you have to connect to that existing one, okay? And you do that through something like this, db.posts. Okay, so this is a no-no. In this case, for an edit, this is a no-no. Do not do this, all right? I'm going to delete this code. Do not do that. So what we want to take advantage of instead is this existing post that we already pulled back. So what we'll do is we'll say post.title, and we'll set it up to our new content, okay? Because here we're just going to assume that the user entered some new content, and we're just going to allow them to save it, okay? And I guess we could display the posts again. Well, I don't know if we want to. Do we want to do that? Let's do that. Display the posts again. We should probably dump out the content message then, shouldn't we? Let's do this. Let's do this. Title. We'll use our good old string interpolation. This slow computer is distracting me. All right, here we go. There we go. End quote. Haha, I got it. There we go. So this should be able to dump out the title and content. And maybe I'll do this up here also, just so we have some consistency from the posts. Okay. So let's try this. We'll say here are the posts again. Okay. So at this point, now what we've done, it's important to note that we said select a post, find one that already existed, grab the post itself, edit the post. And again, it's going to tell me here that this could be a potential null reference exception. But we don't care. We're going to be careful about this here. So again, make sure you have some validation here. But then once we edit this, once we do this here and we edit the content, we want to make sure that we save. I should probably move this up here. Let's save. And then we'll say display the posts again. Okay. So let's run this one more time. Okay. In fact, I am going to, just for now, I'm going to comment out a bunch of this just so we don't have to run through it again. I'm going to comment all this out, and then we'll run it. Start without debugging. Okay, so we got our test posts. Here's our titles, content, some content. I guess I formatted that very terribly, but oh, item.title. It's confusing because of the title I named, Mark Court title, test blog title. Okay, content, this is some content, okay. Ugly, but there we go. So enter post name. So in this case, we have some posts here. So we dumped out the post. So boy, my post names are so terrible. I think that first one is called test post. Let's try that. New post content. So before it said this is some content. So I'm going to say this is different content. And I'm going to hit enter. Oh, I got an object reference null exception. All right, well, that's good. Let's take a look and see what we got. So object reference not set to an instance of object. So that's good. Not great, but let's see what I did wrong. So we have an error. So let's see what we got. So in fact, in the meantime, I'm going to clean this up a little bit just because it is impossible to read. I formatted that very terribly. Okay, let's see. So we got our title output. And what have we got here? Test, oh, that's why. It was called test post title before, that's why. So the null reference exception in this case was because I actually had the name wrong. I typed in test post, if you remember, for the post name. So again, this is where you'd want to have validation. So I'm not following my own best practice and having some sort of validation. So that's really my fault. So in this case, I'm going to just copy the whole title name. So that's putting that separator now, I can see it. So I'm just going to paste it in there, test blog title. New post content. So before I had, this is some content for a test blog, I'm just going to say, this is different test blog content. Okay, enter. And there we go. So unfortunately now it closed because it didn't run, but hopefully we can see that it did run correctly. If you're ever not sure, you can actually come into the Object Explorer. I think I might have showed this last time. So we try to connect to BitSQL, databases. I am connecting to this one, I believe. I can always check my app config. Yep. I'm connecting to 20106. So I'm glad I looked. 20106 tables. And if we look in the posts, because I edited the post, I should be able to right click on this, say view data. And with any luck, we should see something that says, let's see, test, which one did I do? This is different, this one right here. So it was, this is different test blog content, there we go. So there we go. So that's how we edit a post. So the important bit is, again, like I said, make sure, of course, make sure you ask the user to select the post. You have some sort of validation around it, so you don't have a problem like I did the first time. But then also, it has to be a post that already exists. So when you actually go out and you find that post, again, validation, you are editing that post. So this is the post right here. This one, I am modifying the title of the existing post, okay? If you try to modify one that you created brand new, it will not work. It's gonna try to save it, and then it's gonna say that the data either already exists or the blog ID is a conflict or something along those lines, right? So please make sure that you pull out an existing one, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna show how to delete. Actually, called for a break, so you hopefully took your own break. I went and took my own break. So what I'm gonna do though is I'm just gonna show how to delete. What should we do? I think in the assignment, let me take a look here real quick. I have it here in front of me. It's asking you to delete a post. So the thing is, if we're going to delete a post, that's fine. But if we were going to delete a blog, that would be slightly different because we'd have to be careful about deleting a blog and then not accidentally leaving some of those foreign key relationships broken. So if we were deleting a blog, we couldn't leave all the posts there. So remember, at some point, you're probably gonna have to delete a blog, and you wanna make sure that you clean up after yourself and delete any of the posts that are associated with that blog, right? Okay, but we're not gonna worry about that right now. What we're gonna do though is we're going to ask the user to delete a post. So in this case, I think what I'll do is just to save a little bit of time, I'm not going to I'm not going to display out the posts again here, just because we just displayed them. So we already know what the titles are. But all we need to do here, the beauty of this is that all we're looking to do is delete the post. And since we have the post, what we'll do is we'll just ask the user to enter a post name and we'll go find it. Ask the user to select a post. So we'll call this post to delete or something like that, post to delete. And we'll take this post, we'll call this like, I don't know, delete post, something like that, okay? So this is very much like before, we're just asking you to select a specific post. I'm just not displaying the posts again because we just displayed them right here, okay? But this is actually far easier than you might think because all we're going to do is, as long as the post that we found, we're just going to say db dot, come on, posts dot. Now you might be tempted to do dot delete, but it's unfortunately not a delete, it's actually a remove. So if you're looking for a delete method, it's actually the remove method, okay? Now, the thing that's also confusing is notice before that some of the things that we've done were actually on the DB context itself, but we have to be careful here. We're operating on the posts table, okay? And what are we removing? Well, we're removing the post that the user selected, okay? But this thing here has to be a full entity, okay? So in this case, what is being returned? It's a full post. What is this gonna say? Possible null, that's fine, okay. But in this case, we're returning the full post. This isn't like we're not saying remove a post ID or something like that. You know, we're not using a Lambda expression here. We're not saying pass in a post and give me the, you know, the post ID or something along those lines. It's actually the full entity, all right? So this is the full post identity. So the full, I'm sorry, the full post object. So we're gonna say remove it. Now in this case, what I'll do is I will display the posts here. We'll say display the posts one last time. And what we'll do is we'll save it. We're gonna assume that we got everything correct. And that is about all we need to do for delete. It's really that easy. We asked the user to select a specific post. We said remove the post. So this is sort of the equivalent of saying delete post where this post is true, okay? This is sort of a unique item, a unique method. It's really the only one that works that way. There's some other cases where we want to send in the entity, but delete happens to be the most common one, but just remember to save, okay? So that would be the only thing I would say that's probably the benefit of having methods here inside of your blogging context is you don't run the risk of forgetting to do a save. But the thing I would say that the danger of using the methods inside your blogging context is notice that it's always doing a save. So if you look ahead at some of the other solutions, you'll see that here we had an add blog, an add post, a delete post. Look at what it's doing at the end of every single one of these. Save, 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 save. That's not good because what happens if you tell the user to do, you want to do these in a transaction, you tell the user, hey, I want to add a post and then edit the post or edit a different post or something, right? I mean, we can come up with a lot of different scenarios, but the problem is that if every time you execute one of these methods, it's actually saving, it's doing a save, you lose the ability to do transactions. So you might want to cancel that transaction, which means maybe inside of your code here somewhere, inside of this program somewhere, you decide you don't want to save and you want to throw an exception back to the user and say, hey, transaction canceled, error occurred or something, right? And if I had saved constantly throughout this, we're going to end up with a scenario where we've got this half transaction saved and then we're really got a mess and we have no way of really cleaning it up easily, okay? So I think it's a better practice to save your changes when you intend to save your changes and not have them saved just as part of every transaction, okay? There's something called a unit of work pattern, which I'm going to throw out there. It's called unit of work. So feel free to go out and look at that. Along those same lines, there's something called the repository pattern. I am not going to get into that here, but just know that these are principles for working with the database and writing applications in a structured fashion, especially around entity framework. So if you look up this unit of work pattern and this repository pattern, some people will tell you that entity framework already implements some of this, but there's also a lot of people out there that will write their own patterns around entity framework. And really what it allows you to do is do these saves a little bit more as part of a transaction scope as opposed to having them as part of the actual context. Now I know that was a lot of words, might not make a lot of sense, but I'm gonna leave that for you guys to go out there and take a look at that. So if you're interested in how entity framework works, do a little bit of reading, take a look at these specific patterns, okay? All right. But let's see if our database delete worked. So I am going to comment out some of this. So I will comment out we'll comment out all of this just so I can make this work. Okay. And by the way, I'll make this code available as part of a branch. Right now I'm on the blogs console and EF part 1. So I think what I'll do is I'll just call it like, I don't know, EF2 in class or something like that. And we'll, I'll put it out there as another branch. I'll uncomment all this and make it a little bit easier to use. and then you guys can download that and take a look at that as part of this video lesson, okay? All right, so I'm going to start it again. I'm going to assume that I'm not going to have any problems, so I'm going to do a start without debugging. It's not to say I won't, but we'll see what happens. All right, let's see. I'm going to enter a post name. I think I will do the same one I did last time. The title. What did I do? Oh, did I save over the title instead of the content? I may have done that last time instead. That's pretty funny. All right, so I'm going to do this one. Test post title. And then here are the posts again. All right, so we know that the delete occurred. Again, I should probably dump out a message saying that it deleted, but look at, now we had 1, 2, 3 before, now we've got 2. Very good, our delete worked. Exciting. All right, so that is really it. That's really all I had for tonight to show you this. So I hope with the video and I hope with the content that I'm going to push out on the branch, which I'll put it out in the announcement. I'll leave once I get this video out there and updated and embedded as part of the announcement. I'll also put out the branch that this code is going to be under from the in-class demonstration that I had. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, so the last thing I want to do though is show you just real quick here. This was a summary of class 10. This is the assignment. The thing that I went through today was really the assignment for this EF blog and post. Again, it's due next week. I know some of you have already gone through this. Some of you have submitted it, not very many, which is why I'm going through this, but you have I apologize. You have a whole nother week to go through this. It's worth quite a few points, so don't miss out on these points. And again, it's very similar to what we've got, what we went through here. So this is display, add, and create, and just display all blogs, add blog, create blog, and display post. Okay, so that is really what you need to go and get through. So if we look, we can scroll through this. There's quite a bit here, but what's really great now is this covers kind of the first half, and it sort of even touches on what I did last time in the last announcement, the last video that I did. But also, if you look ahead just a little bit, look at this. The next class, this one's not due until May 4th. Posts, edit, delete, okay? So we're gonna go through this probably again next time a little bit, and I'll start getting into some of this validation stuff. So you can see that I'm sort of blending. That's my plan for moving forward here, is that we're gonna blend some of the content from previous lessons and moving forward into new lessons. And then that way we're getting sort of review of some of the content, and I'm giving you a lot of time to get this done, okay? And then once we get into this here, this data annotations, we're gonna start really looking quite a bit at Northwind. We've got quite a bit to do here. So I'll probably start touching on this a little bit in the next video lesson, okay? So if you have any questions and you want to get involved, please stop by in during the video presentation. A number of you did, so that's really great. So I appreciate you guys dropping by. A number of you had some questions, so take advantage of that. They might not always be in the, don't be afraid to speak up, that I'm somehow gonna call you out or put your video on screen or make you talk on the video or something like that. But if you have a question and you don't mind, I will put it in there in case other students find it useful. But otherwise, I'm going to be editing this down, so we don't have a whole lot of dead time in the presentation. And plus, if I'm talking to you as part of something else, I'm not going to include that in the video either. So so don't worry, I'm not going to call you out or anything. All right. So I hope you found this useful. Again, please send any questions you might have, and you can do that through Zoom, or you can do that through email, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. Have a good night.